Most people think discipline is about intensity, about pushing harder, about forcing effort when you don't feel like it. But that's not what it really is. Discipline is not about force. It's about continuation. It's the ability to keep moving without needing a reason. Because the truth is, most people only act when they feel something. Motivation, excitement, urgency. And when that disappears, they disappear with it. That's the cycle. Action tied to emotion. Emotion fades, action stops. Then everything resets. Over and over again. Never building, never stabilizing. So what people call lack of discipline is really dependence. Dependence on feeling ready. Dependence on wanting to do it. Dependence on conditions being right. But discipline removes that. It cuts emotion out of the equation. It replaces "I feel like it" with "I do it anyway." And that shift changes everything. Because now, your actions don't stop when your mood changes. They continue, even when it's boring, even when it's repetitive, even when there's no visible progress. And that's the part most people can't handle. Not the difficulty, the absence of reward. The silence. No feedback, no validation, no sign that it's working. Just the same action, again and again. That's where people stop. Not because it's too hard, because it feels pointless, because there's no evidence, no immediate return, no clear result, just time passing. And that's exactly where discipline begins. Not when it's clear, not when it's rewarding, but when it's empty, when there's nothing pulling you forward, and nothing pushing you either, just the choice to continue. That's the real test. Can you keep going? Without proof? Without momentum? Without feeling anything at all? Because if you can, everything changes. But most people can't. They wait. They hesitate. They look for signs. And in that waiting, they lose time, while someone else just continues, quietly, without needing confirmation. And that's where the separation starts. The real difficulty is not starting. Starting is easy. It gives you something to feel, momentum, direction, a sense that something is finally changing. And that feeling carries you for a while, but it never lasts, because it was never meant to last. It was built on emotion, and emotion is unstable. It rises, it falls, and when it falls, your actions fall with it. That's where everything changes, not in the beginning, but right after it. Because what comes next is repetition. The same actions, the same structure, the same routine, with no visible difference, no feedback, no reward, no signal that anything is working, just time passing and effort repeating. And that's the moment most people break, not because it's too hard, but because it feels empty. Nothing is happening fast enough. Nothing is changing in a way they can see. So the mind starts looking for answers. Is this working? Should I change something? Am I wasting time? And those questions don't come from logic. They come from discomfort. Discomfort with silence. Discomfort with repetition. Discomfort with not knowing. Because people are used to signals. They're used to feedback. They're used to feeling progress. And when those signals disappear, They assume something is wrong. So they change direction. They adjust. They restart. They look for something that feels more effective, something that gives them that same beginning energy again, that same feeling of movement, that same illusion of progress. But every time they do that, they reset everything. They go back to the beginning. They never stay long enough to reach the part where it actually compounds, where effort starts stacking. Because compounding doesn't happen in the beginning. It happens after repetition, after consistency, after time. And time requires continuation, not intensity, not bursts of effort. Continuation. The ability to keep going when nothing is confirming you. That's what most people can't do. They can start, but they can't stay. They leave too early. They exit the process right before it starts working. And because of that, they stay stuck in beginnings, forever starting, never continuing. But the ones who stay, even when it feels empty, even when it feels pointless, they move forward, not because they saw something others didn't, but because they didn't leave. And that's where the separation actually happens, not at the start, but in the continuation. If this message resonates with you, like and subscribe for more content like this. This channel is built for people who are done waiting. Most people don't fail because they chose the wrong path. They fail because they don't stay on any path long enough. They move, they act, they start, but they don't remain. There's always a point where the process loses its meaning, where it stops feeling important, where the urgency disappears. At the beginning, everything feels intentional. Every action feels like progress. Every step feels connected to an outcome. But over time, that connection fades. The actions stay the same. The effort stays the same. But the feeling behind it disappears. And once the feeling is gone, most people begin to detach. They stop taking it seriously. Not all at once, but gradually. They hesitate more. They delay small things. They become less precise, less consistent. And none of it feels like failure. It feels small, almost unnoticeable, like nothing significant has changed. But that's how it happens. Not through collapse, through drift. Small breaks in focus, small breaks in execution, small moments where they choose not to act. And those small moments start to stack. They interrupt continuity. They weaken momentum. They slow everything down. Because discipline is not tested in big moments. It's tested in the small ones. The moments where nothing is forcing you. No pressure, no urgency, no consequence if you don't act. Those are the moments that define everything. Because that's where most people relax. That's where they let standards drop. That's where they allow inconsistency to enter. And once inconsistency enters, it spreads. It affects everything. One missed action becomes two. Two become a pattern. And that pattern becomes your default. Not because you decided it, but because you allowed it. This is how discipline breaks down. Not through resistance, but through permission. Permission to slow down. Permission to delay. Permission to not take something seriously. And once that permission exists, it's used again and again until there is no structure left. That's why continuation is difficult, because it requires constant awareness. You have to notice the small drops in standard, the slight hesitation, the subtle shift in effort, and correct it immediately. Not later, not when it becomes a problem, because by then, it's already a pattern, already part of how you operate. The people who continue don't allow that to happen. They don't negotiate with those small moments. They don't wait to feel aligned. They don't wait to feel ready. They act the same, regardless of how it feels. That's what keeps continuity intact. That's what protects momentum. That's what allows progress to build. Because once continuity is broken, everything becomes harder. You have to rebuild rhythm, rebuild focus, rebuild the habit of acting. And that takes more effort than just continuing would have. Every time. So the discipline to continue is really the discipline to not allow small breaks, not allow small drops, not allow small exits, because those small moments are never small. They're where everything shifts. And the ones who understand that don't rely on motivation. They rely on structure. They move the same way, every day. Not perfectly, but consistently. And over time, that consistency separates them. Not in a dramatic way, but in a permanent one. What most people are waiting for never actually comes. That moment where everything feels aligned, where the effort feels natural, where the process feels clear. They think at some point it will all make sense, that the repetition will feel justified, that the discipline will feel easier. But it doesn't. It stays the same. Quiet, repetitive, unremarkable. And that's the part no one prepares for. Not the difficulty, but the normality of it. The days where nothing stands out. Nothing feels important. Nothing feels like progress. Those days are not interruptions. They are the process. They are where everything is built. Because progress doesn't come from intensity. It comes from accumulation. Small actions, repeated, over time. And most of those actions feel insignificant when you're doing them. They don't feel like they matter. So people start to underestimate them. They treat them like they're optional, like missing one doesn't change anything. But it does, because the system depends on continuity, not effort. One break becomes two. Two becomes inconsistency. And inconsistency breaks accumulation. That's why most people never see results, not because they didn't try, but because they didn't stay long enough for it to build. They interrupt the process. They step out too early. They leave before anything compounds. And when they look back, it feels like nothing worked. But nothing had time to work. The ones who move forward are not doing something extraordinary. They're doing something very simple. They continue, even when it's quiet, even when it feels pointless, even when there's no confirmation. They don't look for signals. They don't wait for reassurance. They don't need to feel progress to keep going. They understand something most people ignore, that the process doesn't announce itself. It doesn't show you when it starts working. It just builds, silently, until one day the result appears. And by that point, it looks sudden, it looks fast, but it wasn't. It was slow. It was consistent. It was built in all the moments where nothing seemed to be happening. So if you keep leaving early, you'll never see it. You'll always stop right before it shows. And if you keep restarting, you'll stay in the same place, just with different beginnings. So the question is not, if it's working. The question is, are you staying long enough to find out? Because if you are, it will happen. Not immediately, not visibly, but eventually. And when it does, it won't feel like luck. It will feel earned. Because you didn't leave. And most people will never reach that point. Not because they couldn't, but because they stopped. So don't make it complicated. Don't overanalyze it. Don't keep searching for something better. Stay. Continue. Repeat. And if you understand that, you're already ahead of most people. If this made sense to you, subscribe, because most people won't hear this enough to actually follow it. And if you're still here, you already know what you need to do. Just don't leave early this time.